Good morning, everyone. I'm going to open the chat window here. Going to be sharing this in multiples, so I'm not sure if you can hear me, so maybe type in the chat if you can hear me or not. Going to share this. We got Ticket Guardian 500 today from ISM Raceway, previously Phoenix Raceway, previously Phoenix International Raceway. It's a 1 mile track, and I'm going to kind of go through my sheet and some of my top picks. I'm not sure if you can see the video here or not. Doesn't really matter if you can see my ugly mug or not, but as long as you can see the sheet, I'm just going to share this here quick if I can find where to get the link. And I'm going to hook up a different mouse and keyboard. Just type here and see, can anyone see or hear me? Just kind of running multiple screens. First time doing this YouTube live, so I didn't have time to do a YouTube video yesterday, so I'm just going to kind of go through some picks here. On the sheet, a lot of people have been asking, there is a separate tab now right beside the cheat sheet. Final targets kind of goes through some of my top picks here. Dominator, place differential, GPP, and then some punt plays. Also going to be adding, just going to go like this and drag down. Kennington I'm also using a bit as well for some GPP stars and scrubs. I don't play a lot of cash games myself. I'm mostly a GPP guy, so I do like the 20 maxes, 3 max entries, stuff like that. So I'm just going to open up another tab in a YouTube channel and see if I can actually see the window. I think most of my followers on YouTube get this link, so you should be there as well. Should be able to see it. Yeah, I don't really see anything here. This is all pretty new here. So if anyone that is watching right now, if you can possibly type in the group chat, see, if you got any questions, type them in there for sure. Or again, Roto Pros members, you can hit me up in the chat room here. I'm going to try and follow along, as well as the I'm in the DFS tap house over here as well. I'm not sure. I want to kind of make sure that someone can see or hear me first. So if you can, type in the chat window just off to the right if you can find it. So for the race, a couple things I'm looking at. We're going to look at practice and qualifying. The start of the week, I guess what I look at before any of the practice and qualifying comes around is just kind of current track history, career track history, a little bit of track type, which is kind of tough because I use driveraverages.com, and their intermediate 1 mile tracks include Dover and New Hampshire, and all three of these included with Phoenix, and all three of those tracks are quite different. So I kind of, don't really weigh that this much for this week. Mostly when I look at the track type history, it's for the 1.5 mile tracks, because there's 12 of those throughout the year. Get a good feel there. So I really start looking at current track history and career track history in the dark green and light green here. So a couple things you can do. I guess first of all, if you want to be able to sort any of these columns, I share this in all my other videos, but you can definitely check it out, is go to File, make a copy, call it whatever you want here, and click OK. Then you get your own. So first thing I always do is I go and look at current track history, look at just average finish, see how guys have done. So he kind of sorts it by, what driver does best at this track. I've also added just recently DK average over the last 2 years as well. So not only average finish, but you can look at DraftKings scoring. So I'll go data Z to A. As you can see, Alex Bowman is tops, but he had that one race he covered for Dale Earnhardt Jr. November 2016 race. started from the pole. He did finish top 10 and he led 194 laps. So that's why he kind of got to look at the number of races each guy's had, because the sample size can be, definitely sway one way or another or alter the picks. So the next guy up is Kevin Harvick. He's number 1 in the model this week. He's finished top 5 3 of the last 4 races. Here over the last 2 years, he's got that 1 win. There's been quite a few dominators over the last 4 races. So that's something to look for definitely today, as there probably could be more than one dominator. Career track history, Kevin Harvick's got 8 wins, 14 top 5s, and then just kind of going over. Let's see, I'm going to share the video on here too. I'm going to go share it on Twitter here as well. I'm going to grab that link again. And just head over to Twitter. Clock. So I'm not really sure. I don't see any comments coming up, so I'm not sure if anyone can see or hear me. I assume so. Their follower count keeps going up here, so I assume you're all there listening to me talk. So I'll keep going here. Again, I was talking about Kevin Harvick and his career track history. So looking at driver averages here, I always open it up and then I look at the track and I go into ISM Raceway, and then you can go over to detail here. I open another tab. And just looking at Kevin Harvick, he's finished 6th or better in 9 straight and 11 of his last 12 races here, which includes 6 wins. Hasn't won since 2016, but he does have a dominating stretch of wins here. And as you can see, he's picked up place differential points. He started from outside. There was a stretch of 6 races here where he led over 130 laps in each of these races. So he's definitely going to be my top pick here this week. And then once you slide over and look at the practice and qualifying, you can see he qualified 10th. And he talked about that actually on Friday, that qualifying has never been his forte here at Phoenix. But as you can see, he was first in practice 2, first in final practice, 4th in 10-lap average in that practice 2 on Saturday. And then he was first in final practice 10-lap average. So definitely my top pick. He's got some place differential upside. I think, by the end of stage 1, he can probably work his way up front and probably lead a bunch of laps. So he's my top play when it comes to dominant, or top play overall, to be honest. Number 1 in the model this week. And coming off that penalty last week, some of the question would be how much speed is he going to show? Well, he proved that after that penalty for that Boulder window there that he received on Wednesday or whatever, that he still got the speed. And he even said that he undoubtedly would have won that race no matter, if that window was bowed or not. So I think he's definitely worth at 11.4, and he's going to be my target. I'm doing 20 lineups and then 20 max tournaments. Going to have probably 70%, so about 14 lineups with Harvick this week. So another thing you can sort by, once practice and qualifying are over, I really take the weight down. As you can see up top here, these are the weights. And you can go and adjust these. So if you feel that you want to look a little more at career track history, a little more at form, you can go change these numbers. I try and keep it within 100 here. But I've gone and put 30% weight on practice average, which is just the final 2 practices. 20% weight on that final practice 10-lap average, 5% on 10-lap average from practice 2. I've got some weight here, which this column here isn't counted in the 100. It's from there to there. Now this is, so the minus number is what we're looking for, and that is just the difference between qualifying position and their average practice in those final 2 practices. So you're looking at Brad Keselowski. He is the top place differential this week. He didn't make it through first round of qualifying, starting 25th, but he did show top 15 speed in final practices and 10-lap averages. So he comes in at a minus 16 there. So that's kind of how I look for my place differential plays. Another one that stands out here, Eric Almirola, starting 22nd, but they made the car better, throughout the weekend. He was 12th in practice 2, 16th in practice number 2, 10-lap average, and then final practice they showed a ton of speed. He was top 5 in 1-lap speed and 10-lap speed. So him at a -11, he's a good play at 8,100 there as well. So I'm just going to go back and I'm going to sort this by salary again. So we just have a look. My other kind of pick for Dominator, Truex is starting on the pole. He didn't really show. He was 3rd in final practice, 11th in 10-lap averages in that final practice. My feeling is to fade him this week. He was a lot more dominant on the 1.5-mile tracks. This isn't his best track overall, as you can see here. He's ranked outside the top 10 in DK points over last 4 races, last 6 races, average finish as well in that time. So I have a good feeling about Chase Elliott here this week, starting 3rd. He showed top speed. He's been good here on this track. Just going to go over here and open up Elliott. 2nd and 12th last year, 9th and 8th the year before. And he also got better last year when it came to, potential dominator points. He led 106 laps here in the spring last year, 34 in the fall. So I think he has a good chance of getting up front, within 30, 40 laps and leading a bunch of laps. He's been my pick on Fantasy Live, NASCAR Fantasy Live, to lead stage 1. So I'll be looking for that. So him and Harvick are my top Dominator plays this week. I'm going to share this link one more time. And again, my final targets here, I've also got Kyle Busch. He's been really good here as well. I'm going to open up his tab on driver averages. So he's finished 7th, 3rd, 2nd, 4th, 4th in his last 6 races here, which is pretty good. He's led 75 or more laps twice. And looking at, he's number 2 in the overall model. He's starting 7th, so he does give you a little bit of place differential. And I think he's kind of a team that they make good adjustments during the race, and I think he can possibly get up front and lead some laps. So those are my 3 drivers that I'm kind of targeting for Dominator points this week. A little bit of a contrarian pick. He's talked about not really liking his car a bunch, but he was good here in the fall before I believe he blew an engine, is Kyle Larson. Chevys haven't been great, but he has been the top Chevy so far this year. So I think we can use him in GPP, and I think having Harvick, Busch, Keselowski with those place differential points, even Chase Elliott with his top speed and track history here, that we can get Kyle Larson a little bit lower percentage this week. He's probably going to fall outside the top 5 in GPP ownership. Same with like a Logano, but his final practice speeds scare me a little bit. This is also not his greatest track. Denny Hamlin, I think, makes a good GPP play. He was fastest in 10-lap average in that 2nd practice, dropped off a little bit in final practice, but just seeing that he was tops in the 10-lap averages in that second practice, the first practice yesterday on Saturday, is good, starting 6th. So he's kind of an outside. He'd be like my 4th or 5th rank when it comes to Dominator points this week. Jimmy Johnson struggled this year. Again, this has been a horrible track for him over the last 2 years. He's been good here, as you can see, his career track history. He's got the 3rd best career track history at Phoenix, but he's struggled so far this year, hasn't got a top 10. They were like super pleased that they got a 12th place finish last week, so that just kind of shows you where the 48 team's at so far this year. Qualified 17th, and they did show top 10 speed in final 2 practices. So he kind of makes he'd be like my 3rd or 4th place differential target this week. And again, I think just having these other guys around him, he might be a little bit lower owned, but Denny Hamlin I think is going to be lower owned than Jimmy in the 9K range. Ryan Blaney, again, starting 12th. The Fords have been strong. Just going to have a look at his last 2 years. There's Blaney. Yeah, he was good in 2016. He had top 10s in both races with the Wood brothers. Last year he was 23rd and 17th. He did start from the pole in the second, so he lost a ton of place differential last year. So that's kind of dictates his ranks. And then combine that with just 26th in final practice, 24th in 10-lap averages, kind of scares me a bit at 8,900. I'd rather go up to Johnson or Hamlin, or even drop down to Kurt Busch, starting 23rd. He showed some speed, inside the top 20, 15. So I think he's kind of like a 12th to 18th place car, Busch, with some upside, if there's any crashes or anything like that. One of my favorite plays here in the 8K range is Eric Jones. He's starting 9th. So anytime you see like an Eric Jones or not so much an Elliott, but looking at Eric Jones, Bowman, Austin Dillon, some of the younger, less experienced drivers, seeing them start inside the top 10, they're going to be a little bit lower owned, especially when you got place differential plays all around them, with, Clint Boyer 19th, Almirola 22nd, Kurt Busch 23rd, and you see Eric Jones right in the middle at starting 9th. It's going to be a little bit lower owned. I like him a lot for GPPs. He showed top 10 speed in final practice, which was good. He was 9th and then 7th in the 10-lap averages. And then also just looking at, he's third best here over the last 2 years when it comes to average finish. Yeah, last year he was 8th and 4th, started 8th and 11th. So he started right around this range on average last year and finished with an 8th and 4th. Toyotas have shown some speed, so definitely like him as a GPP play this week. I think you could even, if you're going to go a little bit more balanced, even in cash games, I think he makes a good play. Gives you that one separator. As for ownership, he's probably going to be around, 8th to 11th in ownership, I would guess. Maybe even a little bit lower for lucky. Boyer makes a not bad play. He's been pretty consistent. I don't think he has that top 5 upside, but 10th to 12th place finish, starting 19th, that gives him some points at 8,200. I think makes sense. He's going to be a little bit lower owned as well, just because Eric Almirola he's going to take up a lot of the ownership. He's going to be top 5, maybe even top 3 in ownership, behind say a Harvick and Keselowski. Almirola could come in 3rd in ownership for GPPs this week. Starting 22nd, and they made their car a lot better throughout practice. 12th in practice 2, 16th in 10-lap averages, but then came out flying in final practice, 4th in the 1-lap speed, and 3rd in the 10-lap average. So really promising there as well. Just checking on the chats. Oh, yeah, I hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Scott. Oh, caps lock again. If we can get this chat, see if anyone has any questions. I kind of wanted to answer some questions live. Like I said, I'm just kind of learning this YouTube live thing, so we'll see how it goes. I think I might be doing this every Sunday morning. If people are liking it, hopefully we can get some questions in. But I'm just going to keep talking about some of the drivers I like and some of the ones I'm fading here this week, and we'll go from there. Show you some things on the sheet. So I guess before I was talking about Almirola, he's a -11, which is number 2 behind Keselowski in my place differential rankings this week. Talked about him a little bit. Something I wanted to also show you if you want to research. Something I added here would have been after Daytona. So Atlanta was last year. I just showed start finish differential of the last 6 races. So this would be the last 3 years because there's 2 races here at Phoenix each year. I added DraftKings scoring, so you can kind of go back in the past and just kind of see where DraftKings scoring has been. And then down at the bottom, once you're looking, you can, what I did was like it shows how many guys had positive place differential, how many guys had double-digit place differential, double-digit fast laps. That's starting to get into your dominator points. How many drivers had 20-plus laps led, how many had 50, how many had 100. So one thing I wrote about in my articles this week is with that there's been at least one driver to lead 100 or more laps in all 6 of those races, and there's been at least 2 drivers in 5 of the last 6 races who have led 50 or more laps. So dominator points are big, and like I said, kind of like yesterday's race, Keselowski and Allgaier led. I think we're going to have 2 or 3 drivers, maybe one that leads just over 100. We're probably going to see, I think my prediction is 3 drivers that are going to lead 50 or more laps today. I talked about those dominator drivers, but this is a tab you can just kind of go back and look at the races, and you can compare, especially when there's 2 races at the same track in a year. The track conditions are going to be a little bit different when it comes to November and March in Phoenix. Maybe not so much Phoenix because temperature's pretty close, but other tracks. So you can go back and you can start comparing. If you just want to look at the fall race from 2017, or you just want to look at the spring race from 2017, 16, and 15, going back, you can kind of go and look at that. I'm going to be adding a little bit more to this in the future, taking suggestions on, anything anybody wants to look at or see in these sheets. Definitely, hit me up on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9. Any of the chats. I do the 2 chats here. I also do my preview article every week over on dfsr.com. Just going to open that up. Got so many tabs going here, I'm getting lost. I've also got behind this screen that you're looking at, I've got 2 other screens going with about 4 different chats. So trying to keep up a little bit everywhere this morning. I've only got about 7 of my 20 lineups done, so reserved them in, and the time change today doesn't change here. I'm in Saskatchewan, so our time doesn't change, same as Phoenix. I don't think their time changes as well. But so to go to dfsr.com if you're looking for my weekly preview article. Comes out on Wednesday. You can go to other. It's kind of down here a bit because we've had some hockey articles the last few days. You can find my cheat sheet in here every week as well. There's a link at the top. You kind of go through a preview. I do a podcast every Friday. I've been solo the last few weeks. Boss has been busy, but maybe looking for some guests here coming up once I get the programming figured out and the editing and which program to use. Look at some trends, and then down at the bottom you can grab a link. I look at some pre-qualifying targets. So actually my pre-qualifying guys, I looked at Ty Dillon, and something kind of talked about this morning in the DFS Tapos chat was I didn't really like looking at Ty Dillon's, going back to the main cheat sheet here. Like the price at 6,400, started in 28th, but as you can see, he was 31st in his final 2 practices. Something we talked about was last year. I went back and looked at his practice speeds going in to the Phoenix races, because we go back and we look here. He has got a good track record here. He's finished, I believe, 11th and 16th and 15th in his last 3 races here. Looking at those 11th and 16th place finishes last year, he was outside. In the November race, he was outside the top 30 in both final practices and outside the top 20, 22nd and 28th, I believe, in the final 2 practices in the spring race here, and came out with some nice finishes. So that kind of made me like him a little better. I'm just got to make a stand somewhere, and I think I'm going to fade him because I think he is probably going to be, top 5, top 10 highest owned, and I think he's definitely worth the fade. Talked about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's in a backup car, started in 29th. So he had some trouble with that backup car in practice 2 yesterday morning, afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. Got a little bit better in final practice. I think they can even get a little bit better when it comes to race. So I think he's a top 20 car this week. And again, I'm just going to start erasing some of these tabs. Go look at Stenhouse here. He has been pretty decent here at Phoenix, especially last year. He was top 10 in both races, and he started 21st and 27th. Now, he wasn't his main car then, but I think they can definitely get a top 20 finish, and I think he's even got upside of top 15 here this week, if things go his way. So for that price down at 7,100, I think he makes sense to use. I think you would even consider him in cash games if you're looking to go balanced. Even kind of, it's down in that stars and scrubs range. And then just going down a little more, look at a couple guys that I'm looking at this week. Chris Buescher, I do like starting, 24th. So he didn't show much better speed. He would be a really low-owned contrarian play in that 5,600 range. It's the same. Almirola, I'm fading. He's starting 20th. I do not think he's a top 20 car. I don't like that he didn't have 10-lap speeds in final 2 practices, so that's one reason. If he was starting 30th, I might consider him. But at 20th, he's going to be a fade for me this week. Michael McDowell's my top. Looking at my final targets here, I've got 3 punt plays listed. Michael McDowell's by far my favorite, starting 31st. They got better throughout the final 2 practices on Saturday, which was nice to see. He was 29th, 26th 10-lap in the first practice Saturday, and then 21st in both 1-lap and 10-lap averages in final practice. So I don't think he's a top 20 car, but I think he's got upside of, 21st, 22nd, somewhere in there. And I think his floor is kind of like 25th to 28th. So I definitely like him at 5,200. He really helps you get 2 of those top guys in. you know, a Harvick and Keselowski, so you get your dominator and you get your place differential guy in the 9K to 12K up to the top range. So I definitely like him, and he's even got some track history here. He's in a different car this year. He's in the 34 for front row. Last year he was in the 95 for Levine, but he did, I think he was, I'm just going to double check here, but I believe he was 24th and 22nd last year. So I think he can finish in that range again here this year in quite similar equipment, starting 28th, 25th. So he's even starting outside that this year. So I think he makes sense as a top value. He's going to be high owned for sure at 5,200, but he's definitely a guy I'm considering in cash games this week. And then down at the very bottom, mostly for GPP, stars and scrubs lineups, you can definitely fit, you know, if you want to stack two of McDowell, Ross Chastain, or DJ Kennington, I think you can stack four top guys very easily and you're in the top of your lineup. And if they don't get in crashes and they finish the race, I think it makes a lot of sense. Chastain and Kennington are really low end. I won't consider them for cash. Chastain started in 36th. He did show that 30 to 33 speed, so I think that's kind of his upside would be 30th this week, but at 4,600. And same with Kennington, he started in 34th. He showed that 31st to 35th speed as well. So those guys are kind of you're looking at like 12 to maybe tops 18 fantasy points, but if you stack two of them together and you get those points and you crush it with your four other picks at the top, I think that's a good stars and scrubs lineup that you can go with this week. Couple guys I didn't mention here. Ryan Newman, wasn't really impressed with his final practice, but his second practice they did show speed. I wasn't able to watch the final practice a whole bunch, you know, just to kind of hear some interviews with him just to see how his car was actually running. But seeing that he did have top 10 speed starting 13th, he won the race here last year in the spring. So did like seeing that. He's got some track history. He's talked about this being, you know, one of his favorite tracks to come to. He's going to be lower owned than Almirola for sure. Definitely looking at him for GPPs. Jamie McMurray, I'm not a whole bunch on the Chevys this week, but like I said, up at the top, Kyle Larson's my favorite Chase Elliott, and then Kyle Larson. Talked about Jimmy a little bit. I do like McMurray more than Jimmy. I'd like taking that discount down to 7,600. He's starting 8th, so I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned because of that same reason I talked about Denny Hamlin up there and Eric Jones. Just seeing one of those cars, especially a Chevy, everyone knows they've been struggling lately, the start of the year and the new body. But Arrow's a little bit less this week. This track does race. It's considered an intermediate when you look at driver averages at 1 mile tri-oval there, but it does race like a short track. Turns 1 and 2, you got 10 to 11 degrees of banking. Turns 3 and 4, you got 8 to 9 degrees. So it's a little bit flatter when you're looking at turns 3 and 4. So it does race a lot like a short track. So it takes that arrow. So I think Chevys are going to be better than they have been. They're probably going to, you know, you're going to see more than 1 or 2 in the top 10 this week, I feel. And Jamie McMurray definitely has that top 10 upside. He's not going to get a whole bunch of place differential. Not really worried about that at 7,600 here. He was second in final practice. He showed 9th fastest speed and 10-lap averages, so very positive there as well. So I'll be looking at him at 7,600. Talked about Stenhouse. Talked about see if there's any questions. No, I don't see anything here. So that's kind of my lineup construction this week. I think the contrarian approach, stars and scrubs, is going to be popular with McDowell, McMurray at 7,600, Stenhouse at 7,100. And then I talked about Chastain and DJ Kennington. So for GPP, stars and scrubs is definitely going to be your chalk this week. So I think you can even go a little bit balanced this week if you want to. You know, there could be some crashes, could take some guys out. Anything can happen at this track, especially. So if that does happen, I think a balanced approach would be a nice contrarian. So if I'm going, say, 14 of my 20 lineups are going to be stars and scrubs, and those 6 lineups would be looking at something like Keselowski is going to be high on, you know, maybe getting an Elliott and a Hamlin, McMurray, Stenhouse, Eric Jones, combining a bunch of these mid-tier guys together to be a little bit contrarian to avoid the chalk down here below 7,000 and some of the chalk up top here. A lot of things got to go right for those lineups to hit. But if you're playing multiple lineups, you got to try a bunch of different, a couple different things. You got to make your core, and you got to kind of ride with that. And that's what I mean by going 14 lineups with stars and scrubs this week. But with those other 6 lineups, like I said, I'm going to try and two of those other 6 are probably going to be stars and scrubs with some lower owned guys, fading some of the chalk. And then those other 4 lineups, I'm going to go get a little bit off the board with some balanced lineups and guys that could be very low owned, that they're going to need a lot of things to happen for those lineups to win. But if things do go right and chips fall the way you plan when you make those contrarian lineups, they're going to be low owned for one, so that if things do go that way, you're likely not going to be splitting with anybody else in your tournaments. You're going to be up there by yourself. You got a good chance of taking down a GPP should things go right. That strategy works a lot better when you're looking at tracks like Talladega, Bristol, Martinsville, Daytona, where there are a lot of crashes. And I think this almost fits into that mold. So I'll definitely be trying that out in like 4 of my lineups here once done the video. So be looking at that this week. And then another way you can separate yourself in GPP, maybe if you are going with some chalky guys, is leaving money on the table. I got no problem leaving $500 to $1,000 on the table in my lineups to separate yourself, because a lot of people, a lot of the public out there that isn't watching videos or checking out other people's content and seeing some of the strategy stuff, they're going to try and fit every dollar into their lineup. So something to use in golf too is leaving money on the table, because you're likely to be better, or you're likely to have a more unique lineup than about 40% of the field right off the bat, just by leaving a couple $100. So leaving 500 to 800, even into that 1,000, even more. In 2 of your lineups, you want to leave $1,200 to $1,500 on the table, and you're sold on a couple guys, especially if you're going with stars and scrubs and taking McDowell and Chastain, or McDowell and Kennington, or something like that. And Harvick, and you want to grab a couple guys in this low range and leave $1,200 to $1,500 on the table, you're going to have a unique lineup 100% there. So consider that as well if you're doing multiple lineups. If you're going one lineup, I definitely like keeping it fairly safe, unless you are like a contrarian player. But sometimes you got to feel uncomfortable about your lineup, and those are the ones that sometimes win. So like I said, Kozlowski's probably going to be high on. Harvick for sure with his speed. He's won 2 races in a row. He's been awesome here. So that's kind of my prediction for ownership is Harvick, Kozlowski. You're going to see Almirola, I think, 3rd or 4th in ownership this week, along with McDowell's going to be up there as well. So just consider that. So when, if you're looking for those low-owned guys, just look for who's going to be the chalk in that price range, and maybe just pivot off a little bit. So I think, Elliott's a good pivot off Kozlowski. Elliott's still going to be in the top 10 in ownership for sure. He showed top speed. Like, he's top 6 right across the board here in my sheet, and that's always nice to see. Not great in form. He crashed last week. Did show a lot better, but him and Larson were the only top 10 Chevys in Atlanta as well. So, and I don't really look at the form too much right now, just because right now Daytona's involved in that, and Daytona's kind of a crapshoot to begin with. So the form is going to be weighed a lot more as we get into more races that are similar. So, and that's another thing for using these using driver averages and stuff like that. Looking at the last 6 races, also in the DK average. This is just kind of where I pull my information from. I've got a separate sheet, which is a race by race trend sheet. I'm actually just going to open that up here before I take off and go build some lineups. I want to open, and the link to this is also in my articles on rotoballer.com. I don't believe I've added it on RotoPros yet, but I can. If anyone wants this information, definitely I can share it with you if I can find it. This is the problem with doing live videos. Scrambling around to find something that you didn't prepare for. Here we go, race by race trends. So I started this at the beginning of last year, so I've got a pretty good database going right now with points, DK points from every race from last year, salary trend from every race from last year, and then I also do a GPP ownership trends as well. So right now, the one that just opened up is the 2017 DK points trend. And I color-coded the top for track type by driver averages. So your orange are going to be your intermediate tracks. Green are going to be your 1 mile intermediates. Short tracks are in red. Plate tracks are in blue. So you can see who had what points. You can sort these columns as well if you create your own copy, just like I showed you on the main cheat sheet. And then all the way over to the right is where I draw the track type DK average from 2017. So right now I got it sorted by 1 mile intermediate, which, like I said, I'm not weighing a whole bunch this week just because all 3 tracks are quite different. New Hampshire's like a bigger Martinsville, a little bit of a paperclip. It is flat like Phoenix, but again, different shape. Dover's got like 24 degrees of banking, so it's a completely different track as well. So take this information with a grain of salt when looking at the 1 mile intermediates. But Kyle Busch, Truex, Larson, Elliott, Kansas is on there because this is 2017. So that's something I look at there. So DK point averages. This is just kind of looking at season average, last 6 races, last 10 races. That's last year again. Got salary trends. So I like to look at this going back, looking at the Phoenix race from last year. I'll always go back and just look at who was the most expensive. So last year Harvick was 11-1. This year he's 11-4. There's a lot to do with him coming in with back-to-back wins. But you can really compare it to see, who prices throughout the year. I've got the season average here. And then we got ownership database. So that first one, that's just race by race. I haven't filled in the Las Vegas from this year yet, but you can look at that. As well as you can come in here and you can kind of see where guys have routinely been. And you kind of got to look into it a little bit deeper because guys like Truex, the reason he's 66.6% in GPPs last week, he started at the back of the field. So you kind of got to go use multiple sources to figure out why was he high owned. And you can get a really good trend of, who's going to be consistently low owned throughout the year. Just more, I guess, more research that you can do when building your lineups. This is a 2018 salary trend. Something I'm going to build in is just kind of a look at just to see a guy's salary versus last week. Maybe the guy's salary once we get into the season a little bit more. Last time they were at a short track, what was their salary? I'm going to just kind of add some more tabs to that just to help for research as well. All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up for today. If you got any questions, definitely hit me up on Twitter. I'm going to be in the chat room, the Roto Pros chat room here, members only chat room. So hit me up there if you got any questions prior to the race. Looks like I got some questions coming in already. You can hit me up in DFS Tap House. I'm going to be in there as well. Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings. You can leave a comment in my article below. You can join me in the member chat room over there. Rotoballer.com. I do an article there as well. There is a live chat room at the bottom of that article as well. Like I said, Twitter, hit me up at Jaeger_bombs9 with some questions. We'll go from there. You can email me, jagerbombs99@gmail.com. There's tons of ways to get a hold of me, so definitely hit me up there. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave me some feedback on Twitter or any of those message boards just to let me know if this is something that you guys like, kind of me going over the sheet every week versus a video maybe on Saturday after practice. Maybe I'll do both. Maybe I'll do one or the other. Kind of depends on feedback and what people like. So if I can find time, some weekends I won't be able to do it. But I would say 90% or more of the time I'm going to be doing. I like the idea of doing this live video. I want to get it set up so we can have more interactive live questions while I'm on. But like I said, this is my first attempt at this, so learning a lot as we go. And looks like we got about, I think the race is at 3:30 when we lock. So we got about 2 hours time change today. So I'm looking, like I said, it didn't change here, but it changed. So I'm 2 hours behind. Yeah, 1:30. So we got about 2.5 hours to build our lineup. So lots of time to go do that. So like I said, hit me up with any questions and we'll talk to you next week.